Hello, everyone. This is Patty with EJ Homes. I'm here in Cabo San Lucas with Ceci. She is from CC Law Firm. Ceci.
Hi, Patty. Thank you. Well, I'm very pleased to have you here, all of you in Cabo. We're here to explain you how the process of acquisition of all your clients that you have in the States and Canada will be here in Mexico. As you know, it's a little bit different than in the States. We have different figures, we have different registration things that will sound a little bit different for you, but it's the normal process in Mexico for acquisition.
Okay, so do you have to be a citizen? Is it who exactly could be, what kind of services exactly could you offer our clients?
50 kilometers offshore or from the border, only Mexicans are allowed to have it because a long time ago, when the Constitution of Mexico was made, they say that in case of war, foreigners can come and get their trophies from the sea and from the border. That's right. We have never had a war in Mexico, and hopefully we will never have. But that's a way to protect our country. So everything that is like Cabo, Ensenada, Puerto Peñasco, and all those places that are 50 kilometers offshore, the only way to get it is by being Mexican. And all, as you know, all your clients are either from the States or Canada. Actually, our major clients come from those countries because they love being here, it's vacational, all those kind of things. So the only way to acquire it is through a trust. A Mexican trust is called fideicomiso, right?
Okay.
And who has the fideicomiso? Well, it's a bank. Any Mexican bank or bank that is held in Mexico will be considered as Mexican, and they will have the trust. And then you, as a foreigner from the States, from Canada, call it a different country, will be the sole beneficiary of those rights. It doesn't mean that the bank is going to take it away from you at any point. No, it just means that the bank will be the administrator of your property, and you are the one who's going to tell him, hey, bank, I want to put a lien on it. Hey, bank, I want to assign the rights to a third party. Hey, bank, I want to do this with my property. You just have to let them know, and they will do whatever you want with the bank. This fideicomiso doesn't apply for Mexico City because it's not 50 or 100 kilometers from the border or offshore.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you need a fideicomiso, a bank trust, if you are not a Mexican citizen. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's something that you could help our clients with.
For sure.
Okay, so another question that a lot of our clients have is that if they are already Mexican citizens and they are married to someone that is not a citizen, what is the process on that?
Well, it will be, first of all, if they are acquiring a property in all of these places where are border or 50 kilometers offshore, if they want to put the name of the wife that is not a Mexican on the deed, we have to do a fideicomiso because
Okay.
they are not Mexicans, and the only way to do it is through a fideicomiso. So we will make a fideicomiso, constitute one with the 50% or whatever percentage of the wife, whatever percentage of the husband, and together they have their own fideicomiso.
Okay, so then if wife wants to be on the deed and she is not a citizen, she could get 50% of that through a fideicomiso bank trust, and then the husband will get the 50% being a Mexican citizen.
That's right.
Okay.
You don't have to be a foreigner to have a fideicomiso. Even if a Mexican would like to have a fideicomiso, they are allowed to do it. But it's in the praxis, it's not very sustainable because you have to pay an annual fee for the administration of the bank, like in your credit and debit cards that you have to pay monthly fees or annual fees for having it. It's the same with the bank. They will charge you for the administration of your fideicomiso. So if you're Mexican, citizen, not residents, if you're a citizen, there is no reason why to have a fideicomiso, but you can always have it.
So you had mentioned about 50 kilometers from border and then 100 kilometers from shore. So explain to us just a little bit. So let's say, for example, a non-citizen is trying to purchase a property here in Mexico. What's the difference between Cabo and San Miguel de Allende?
Well, the difference is that if they purchase in San Miguel de Allende, no border or offshore is near there. So they can acquire as a simple, like a transaction of purchasing and selling agreement before the notary. And that's a simple transaction. You don't need a bank because you don't have offshore or border. So it will be a really simple and easy transaction compared to, it's not that it's not easy and simple, it's just a little bit more meticulous and harder to do. And a notary won't do it by itself for you here in Cabo. You will need a closing attorney, someone that has expertise on this to make it happen in Cabo or any place where we already mentioned 100 kilometers and 50 kilometers from border.
Got it. Okay. So, and just a brief on the end of notary. I know in the United States, a public notary is someone that who could notarize your documents, that's able to just obtain the documents and notarize them for you. I do understand here in Mexico, a notary is completely different from ours. So,
Yeah.
please explain.
Oh, that's a very frequent question from our foreign year clients. Well, as you said, in the States, anyone can be a notary. Here in Mexico, there are certain rules. We have a law for the notary. First of all, you have to be 30 years old, have good reputation, and also you have to pass an exam. Okay? So besides that, you have to be appointed by the state governor. So once you pass the exam, you are appointed and they grant you a number. You will see everywhere in Mexico, notary number 1, number 2, number 31, number 34. Why do we have numbers? It's because it's an easy math calculation. The more that the community, not the state, well, yes, the state grows, you have to have certain amount of notaries. I don't really know the exact number, but every 100 and 500 and something people that lives in the state need to have a notary. So the more people that comes and live here, another notary has to be added. So that's why we have numbers of notaries.
Multiple notaries.
Yes.
Okay.
They have public faith. They can testify. They can testify before the public registry, and they can say this is valid, this is not valid, this is a go, this is a no go. For every document, for every transaction, for the wills, they have this kind of faith. So here, the notaries are very important people because they have their own rules, regulations, law. They have public faith from the state.
So a notary here in Mexico, it's more so as considered as an attorney, paralegal, what exactly?
They are public servers, but they also do private practice in their public service. It's confusing because they will always act before the law, but they charge you for doing those things. You can go with Notary 1 or Notary 26, and they will have kind of the similar prices, but not the same because they charge for their work, even they are public service.
Got it.
So that's pretty much the difference.
So Ceci, I have a few clients that have been asking this question, and I know we briefly spoke about how they could obtain the property, but now how could they actually go through the process of this? Again, let's say, for example, I am a Mexican citizen, naturalized Mexican citizen, and my spouse is American. How could we do that process for my spouse to become a Mexican citizen since I am a Mexican citizen now?
Well, that's a very frequent question because, as you know, in California, mostly of the border from the States, most of the people has their parents that were born in Mexico, and then they take you back to the States, and then you make your life in the States, and you are an American citizen because you were born there, right?
Correct.
That happens also in Mexico. If your mother or your father were born in Mexico, they are Mexicans, your birth certificate says the name of your father, and then it says Mexican, where they were born. With that documentation, we go through a process, and you, just for being the the daughter or the son from someone, from a Mexican, you have the right to become a Mexican through a process, obviously, that it's painless. I promise you, I do that all the time. And then you become citizen. You don't have to be residency for those special cases. But for example, if you are now naturalized because your mother or father were Mexican, and then you want your husband or wife to become Mexican, they have to go through a process. First of all, they have to be residents. They have to be resident, Mexican resident. Then, after 5 years of being resident, they can become and apply for being citizens. How is this process? It's an easy thing. It's just like in the States. You will have to go through a cultural exam if you are less than 60 years old. They will ask you, why the colors of the flags? How many presidents we have had in Mexico? Like those kind of questions. And then you have to prove that you are fluent in Spanish. After that, you wait like 2 months and then you got your Mexican passport as a citizen. But first, there is no way to skip of being temporary or permanent residency. That if your spouse or your sons were born in Mexico and are Mexican citizens already.
Okay. So then with the residency, you said it's 5 years. They need to, once they take that exam, they need to be fluent in Spanish, right? So is there anywhere in there, because I know to become an American citizen, they'll do it in Spanish. Is there anything that they do here in Mexico that they'll question you in English?
No, you have to prove that you are fluent in Spanish. Besides, in the same day, they will do the cultural exam, which is like they give you like a guide to study.
Okay.
And they make you 10 questions. We don't know which ones they're gonna be. They change it. They make you read a brief thing in Spanish to prove that you can read in Spanish. And then they will start speaking with you like a very everyday chatting, like why you like Mexico, when you first came here, why would you like to become a resident? It's a very like normal chatting with them, but they want to prove that you can speak fluent
In
Spanish. Not perfect, just fluent to understand. But here's a very special thing. If you are over 60 years old, you don't have to do the cultural exam. You
Okay.
skip that, but not the fluent exam. You just have to prove that you speak Spanish.
Okay. And then also with the residency, you said 5 years. Does that mean that that person, the spouse or whoever it is that's trying to apply for the residency, do they need to live here in Mexico?
No, that's a very important question. Everyone's always asking that. You don't have to live in Mexico, but for being temporary residency, the purpose of being resident is because the law says that you spend over 100 or 180 days, so 6 months, in Mexico. That's why you want to become residents, because when you pass from the States or whatever country to Mexico, the maximum that you can obtain is 180 days. That's
Okay.
the maximum that you can obtain a stamp as legal stay in Mexico. So if you pass that, you qualify to be a temporary or permanent residency.
Wow. Okay.
What are the qualifications for being temporary or permanent residence? It depends on each person, because you don't have to be married to a Mexican. You don't have to have any kids from Mexico. You can just apply for having many things, for investing. If you have a property that the value of the property is above, well, they say 5 million pesos, but obviously with that amount of money, it's like 250K. They don't grant it because it's up to the consul's disclosure. They will determine if you apply or not. The main reason the Mexican government want to know that you have enough money to live in Mexico without working here.
Got it. Okay.
So you have to prove bank statements. You have to put invest statements. And if you are retired, you can go straight to have your permanent residency.
Okay. So question there. You said bank statements and that you have enough money to live here, right? Is that, if I'm not mistaken, and you could correct me here, that you cannot obtain a bank account if you're not either a resident or a citizen here, right? So does that mean that that proof, could it be American proof?
It has to be American proof.
Okay.
You have to prove your economic solvency in your country where you work, where you receive the money, to prove that you have enough money to come to Mexico without working certain amount of time. That's your residency without permit to work. There are many kinds of residency.
So the residency without permit to work, meaning I don't have to have a spouse that lives or is a Mexican citizen, as long as I prove that I could live here with my own assets.
That's right.
And then I could apply for the residency and then eventually, possibly, to become a citizen.
That's right.
Okay.
Completely right. That's how it works. And well, the difference between permanent and temporary, it's an easy thing. You have to prove to have enough money, and the temporary residency is for 1 year, then 3 years, and then you go to permanent residency.
Perfect. Okay.
And permanent residence, you just go straight to the permanent, you wait your 5 years, and then you become citizen. That's the difference between those two residencies.
So, Ceci, I also had a client that was looking into purchasing a property here in Mexico. Two properties actually, one in Rosarito, one in Mazatlan. However, the property was beachfront, and we came across one of the agents out here letting us know that unfortunately they would not be able to have a grand deed fully released for them as full ownership due to the fact that it was federally owned. Can you tell me a little bit more about the properties being federal owned?
Well, here's the thing. When you own a property, it's a piece of land, right? But beaches are protected by the federal zonification.
Okay.
Thereon, you cannot own part of the beach or the sea. But what you can do is, if your property is beachfront, you can have a concession from the federal zone for protection or ornamental use. It means that you're not going to explode it. It means that you're not going to make any business out of it, and you are never allowed to put structural things there. Okay? But it means that you are going to have the right to put any movable things like your chair, your table, something that can be removed, even if you left it there for the whole season, but it's going to be removable and it's not going to affect the sand or any other part of the beach. It's not going to be never yours. It belongs to the Mexicans and to Mexico, but you are granted with the concession of it. That's something for particular use, right? For the houses, like in the case of your client. But a very clear example of it, it's like when you go to any restaurant that eats in the beach, they used to explode it and make business out of it. They don't have walls. As you can see, they have these little things made out of wood that they put, and they divide their property from the next restaurant that are just in front of the beach, and you can swim into the beach. That's a clear example. They don't own that piece of the sand and of the beach, but they can explode it in a different way. It will be exploitation or exploded in a business manner, and they pay different fees. You don't own it, but you have the permission to use it, and you have the right to do that.
So let's say, again, just want to make sure that we're clear on this. So again, let's say my clients do end up buying that piece of property or what have you, beachfront, right? They own their piece of land, fully owned. Now, the piece of land or sand, what have you, in front of them, that is a federal structure there, which it could be land, it could be sand, it could be whatever it is. So there, that piece, let's say, for example, they have family over, they want to have beachfront access. Are you able to obtain those permits, which I'm assuming they're permits, right, from the state, from concessions? Okay. So they're able to rent that space out for what period of time? Is there a limit to that period? Could it be ongoing? Is it just temporary? How does that work?
Yeah, it's per year. Every year you have to renew it. But first come, first served. If you first came and requested, you will have it for the next amount of years unless you stop paying the federation or the federal government for having it. So every year you will have to renew it and pay for it. First, you have to apply.
Okay.
The law has changed 2 years ago. And first, you have to be owner from either the lot that it's in front of the piece that you want the concession or next to it. not anymore.
Okay.
Since 2 years ago, I can go and say that house that is beachfront, I want the concession of that. I just pay the permits, the appraisals, and everything that has to be submitted to the federal concessionist, and then they grant it to you.
And the pricing, is it just depending on the location, or is there a set price for that?
Well, there is two things that comes here. First, they charge you for a study and analyzing it. And then after they make the study and the analysis of it, which is a regular fee that they will charge, is like about $500 to $600 just for the study of it and analyzing it. They will charge you per the amount of the square meters, and well, they make a measurement, the square meters that they will be granting you. It's not very expensive. The thing is that for having those to submit those studies, you have to pay a lot of people to make it happen. You have to pay the topographer, appraiser, a lot of payments that you have to do, but it's not expensive, and you renew it every year.
Got it. Okay, so then all the larger expenses per se are a one-time fee, and then after that, you as an owner of the back property, you need to make sure that you continue making those yearly payments.
Yes, just the yearly payments. After you make your first topographer study, you don't have to renew it every year. It's just once they grant it to you, just the annual payment.
I know here in Mexico, or any part of Mexico, it's a little bit of a different process to where you're about to close the property, you submit an offer, or you're in direct contact with the seller, and there's escrow. You have to open escrow, and then that's one company, but then you have a different company for closing. In the United States, so we just want to make it different, right? To where we could compare it. In the United States, once you open escrow, you're closing. Like, you don't have to hire a different person. They do everything for you. How does that work here?
So first of all, you have two brokers, one for the purchaser, one for the buyer. They come together, they grant an offer to purchase. Once they agree, they make a counter offer and everything. They got into agreement of the purchase price and how it's gonna be paid. Then each party have an attorney, the seller and the buyer, who represents their interest. The attorneys say, okay, so the purchase price is $100. It's just as an example, right? So we got into a due diligence period. The due diligence period is always granted for 15, 20, 30, for 45 days. It depends on the property and how difficult the closing is gonna be, because it changes from each property, right? So the due diligence period is where the attorney from the purchasers make all the diligence to know if the property has no liens, encumbrances, is in good standing, and it doesn't have any trails going on, that the property taxes are paid, that it has or doesn't have any sour debt or water debt or any debts for the property. Also, we will have to check that the property is in good standing. For example, if you are purchasing something that has been constructed for 20 years, you make your home inspection and make sure that the house that you are purchasing is in good standing, or if not, that you're aware what you're purchasing. That's the due diligence period. Let's say it's gonna be 20 days. It depends on every transaction. After that, once it finished, but during this period, there is a third party involved that has nothing to do with the purchaser or the buyer, which is the escrow. It's a third party of non-interest, because he's not in your side as a purchaser or in my side as a buyer.
Okay.
So it's a third party of non-interest that you pay $650 or $700. That's the average price for their services. And you put a retainer, you can call it retainer, or first deposit. Okay? So the first deposit.
Who does, sorry to interrupt you. Who does the first deposit?
The purchaser.
Okay.
Always the purchaser is the only one that is going to use the escrow, and he's the one who pays it.
Is there a minimum amount that has to be deposited into that account?
Not a minimum amount. You always have to pay their services, which is $650 or $700. But it depends on the offer that the brokers make. It usually is the 10% of the total of the property, or $10,000, $5,000. It depends on each property.
So if the sales price is, let's just say 650,000, then you should be depositing 65 grand?
No. The 5%,
Is it about 5%?
5 to 10%.
Okay.
As initial deposit. This deposit will be completely and fully reimbursed during the due diligence period. Let's say we have 10 days, 15 days for due diligence. For the due diligence period before it expires, I, as your attorney for the purchases, I will let you know what, this property has an encumbrances, has this, that, it's up to you because it's a business decision, but we won't be able to close until 1 year, 2 years, or whatever time. So it's your business decision to take it or not, but I make my work as a due diligence agent or attorney, and then you make your decision. However, during this period, you can say, you know what? Since I have these 15 days, it's a no-go for me, so I take my money back and look for another property. After the due diligence period is finished, then it's not reimbursable, this amount of money, and you have 45, that's a standard, 45 days to close, okay?
After the due diligence
diligence.
period. And usually from opening that escrow to the due diligence, is there a standard or how?
Time?
Yes.
15 to 20 days.
No more.
Yes, it could be more. For example, right now I'm handling a property which the purchase price is like $18 million and the due diligence is for 6 months because it's a huge property. We have to make a structural. We have many due diligence. It depends on what are you doing. If it's a purchase of a house, your due diligence is just for encumbrances, taxes paid, and the home inspection. But if it's something like that for a developer, we have to do a structural due diligence to see if the project that we want to develop, it's a go or no go based on the land, on the use of the land, of how thick the land will be for our tower. So many due diligence, not only the legal one, right?
And that's obviously something that you will advise all of your clients of how much time is needed or required for the due diligence period.
Yes, for the legal due diligence, I always take 15 to 20 days, but it depends. If it's a lot, we also work together with the architect because they have to check that the project that the client wants to develop, it's a go or no go for his due diligence. Because if it's a protected zone, when he cannot build his house of 3 storage, it's available, then he cannot buy that property, right? So we work along with too many other architects and professionals of this. It depends on the client. Maybe it's a house that it's already built, so they don't need an architect. It's just me from the legal point of view and the home inspector, which will check that everything is working and the structure will be able to stand for the rest of the 50 or 20 years that he's gonna have it, right? So after the due diligence period, then we start the closing process. Let's say the 15 days has already passed, then we get into fideicomiso. It will change a little bit. It's always 45 days because for the closing, we need different parties involved. First of all is the Foreign Affairs Ministry. Remember, you as a foreigner, you have to have a fideicomiso, but not just the fideicomiso. The Foreign Affairs Ministry has to double check or make a background of you that you are not in the blacklist, how they call it, and you are allowed to make businesses in Mexico. So once you have the Foreign Affairs Ministry permit, which is the one that takes longer, we need appraisal because there are 3 purchase prices. The appraisal price, the purchase price that it's agreeing between buyer and seller, and the price that it's in the cadastral office. And the municipality and the government, remember you as a purchaser, the municipality is going to say, I'm going to charge you taxes because you have enough money to buy, then you have to pay taxes, the acquisition taxes. What is it based on? It's based on the 2% of the highest price of the 3 that I mentioned. The purchase price, the cadastral price, and the appraisal price. doesn't matter if they don't match each other. If one is $1, $100, and
Wow.
$1,000, they're gonna take the higher one because they want to have more money, the municipality. After that, we have the Foreign Affairs Ministry permit, good. Then we have the appraisal. We already got it, that it's gonna take 15 days because it has to go with the seal from the municipality of the cadastral office.
So, sorry, is it going to take 15 days from opening escrow, just how the home inspection, or is it after the home inspection?
No, the home inspection is before, because if you want to purchase, you want to make sure that the house is good for your standards or for whatever you want. So 15 days is for the home inspection or due diligence, however.
So then the appraisal comes in 15 or 20 days after the inspection.
15 days has passed. So we say as a buyers, it's a go for us, we will do it. The buyers pay the appraisal. So after you decide you are gonna purchase and the home inspection pass, so then is the appraisal,
It's a go.
the Foreign Affairs Ministry permit, which are the most expensive ones, the certificates of no lien, certificates of no property taxes debt, and then a bank comes through, because you as a foreigner have to constitute a fideicomiso. So name it a bank. Any bank that is in Mexico will be able to have the business. If an American is selling you the property, it means that already has a fideicomiso. So it's an assignment of rights. You don't have to create a new fideicomiso.
Okay.
It just assigned the rights. So it will depend on the transaction, right?
Got it.
So once you have this, then the bank has to verify the project. You go with your attorney, you run all the documentation, you decide how you're gonna purchase as an entity. As an entity, it could be based in the States, based in Canada, based in Mexico, wherever you want. It could be an LLC, irrevocable trust, living trust, a corporation, LLC, incorporation in the States. Any one of these can do it. Just it's a little bit, not difficult, but it's gonna take a little bit longer because all the documents needs to be translated by an official translator from Mexico. They need to be notarized, some of them. If not, they have to be apostilled by Secretary of the State wherever it was issued. And always something that has to be renewed is a certificate of good standing or certificate of standing. It depends on the states in the USA, the name of it. And it has to be no longer than 6 months, so we can know that the LLC incorporation or whatever is in good standing.
It's still valid.
It's still valid, and it also has to be apostilled. Once it comes to Mexico, we make the official translation here. We grant it to the notary. We fill a lot of documents before the bank, because the LLC or whatever incorporation or entity, as we call it, is going to be the beneficiary, the owner or beneficiary, which is the same, or individuals. You can have 100 of individuals owning a 1%, 20%, 2 of them, many individuals. So that's up to the client. He has to decide if it's going to be through an entity or as individual, the way that they are going to acquire. So for this process after the due diligence, we always take 45 days. Which bank is the best? The best bank is going to be the one that you have the most trust in. The banks are entities that can get in bankruptcy, that can get in trouble. Many things will happen and has happened, but it doesn't mean they are going to leave you with your trust. It just, they change. They are entities. They never die. Just the trustee is going to be someone different, but I mean, it's kind of different. Right now, Cabo is growing so much that every bank has a fiduciary delegate here. So all the banks now are good. Before, like 10 years before, they used to be in Mexico City. So whatever you want to do, you have to go either to Mexico City or send the documentations. Right now, all of them are located here in Cabo because of the boom. Yeah. So all the banks are good. They are kind of different, but if you trust them and if you want to make business with them, it's good. I wouldn't recommend one more than another. Obviously, there are ones that I like to work the most, but I don't know if in 10 years they will still be in the market or not. That's something that I cannot foresee, but I will always give you the best option at the moment that I am making my recommendations. So the transaction is 15 days until you decide for the due diligence, until you as a client decide it's a go or not go. Then you have 45 days to close. It means that you have your Foreign Affairs Ministry permit, appraisal, certificates, and all the documentations apostille as an entity or as individual, good to go. The notary project reviewed by both attorneys, from the seller and the buyer, and from the banks, because the bank has to agree on all the documentation, and then you're good to close. That's the process. It's simple because you hire someone that is aware of all of these transactions. So the only thing that your attorney is going to take from you is your private documentation, like your proof of address, if you are married or not, your social security number, and IDs, and address, and phone numbers, and email. Besides that, is an easy transaction, which will be held by your attorney.
Perfect. Okay. So, Ceci, I heard you mention if the seller already has a fideicomiso, a bank trust, right? The buyer could go into that living trust when the transaction is done, right? Seller to buyer, right? Let's say, for example, the buyer doesn't want to have that bank trust with that certain or particular bank that the seller has. Could they make any changes there, or do they have to take it there and then change it?
No. When already a fideicomiso is settled and it's gonna sell that property, the beneficiary, it's called an assignment of rights, because the fideicomiso is already formed. So you just assign the rights from the Foreign Affairs Ministry permit, which lasts 50 years. Okay, the Foreign Affairs Ministry permit is good for 50 years. After 50 years, you just renew it and pay again. That's what it means, that you have to pay again. So you assign the rights, Patty, and you can either stay in that bank, which will be easier, or say, you know what, I don't like HSBC and I want to change to Citibank Banamex, which is here. So you just change it and make a notice to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. This house who has this number of permit is going to change from HSBC to Citibank. And that's the notice that we give. Or if you say, you know what, your permit has already 45 years. There are 5 years left. I don't want your permit. We cancel that permit and renew a permit for one brand new with 50 years from now on. And it's a simple transaction. That's up to your lawyer. He will advise you. He will review everything during the due diligence and let you know.
Ceci, so I have a few clients that have asked me in the past. Let's say, for example, they own a property here, right? In Mexico, they're the full owners. They are Mexican citizens. However, their heirs, which are their children or their spouse or their mom or whoever the heirs will be, their beneficiaries, they are not Mexican citizens or residents, but they do have it in a bank trust. What happens to the property then?
Well, first of all, in Mexico, the laws are very clear. So whenever you die, and if you die, we call it intestado, it means that you don't have a will and you didn't left it to someone, then you have to get into a juicio, okay, which is a trial where the kids, the spouse, or the first line, whatever, let's say he had a spouse, so the spouse and then the kids, the spouse will have the 50% and then the kids the remaining 50%.
So that's standard.
That's standard.
So let's say, for
example, if he didn't left a will.
Okay. So let's say, for example, my client passes away. He's married with kids. He did not leave a will, right? It goes 50% automatically to the spouse and then 50% to the other surviving children. That's just automatic.
Yeah. But if he had a fideicomiso, if he weren't Mexican, if he were a USA citizen, and if he had a fideicomiso, the fideicomiso is something very particular and it's awesome because it's also a will. When you create your fideicomiso, it makes you make 3, 2, or 1 assignations. And it already says, in case of decease, who will be the substitute beneficiary. You can name an LLC, and you can, if let's say if it's 50% and 50% of the spouses, you can say the remaining spouse will have the 50% of the one who died. So the 100% goes to someone, but you have to put it there. Or you can say the 50% of the one who dies will go to these children in 25 and these other children in 20, and the remaining 30 to this third child.
Okay, perfect. So does it make a difference if the beneficiaries are Mexican citizens or not?
Yes, it makes a difference because it will be a fideicomiso or not. It will be a simple transaction where you assign the rights of a fideicomiso or of a property. If you are Mexican, you just get the deeds with your name on it. If you're not, you have to create a fideicomiso.
Okay.
Anyhow.
So let's say
the borderline, remember?
Got you. Okay, so my client is a Mexican citizen. He leaves beneficiaries to his wife and his kids. In order for them to obtain that bank trust, they need to be Mexican citizens?
No. If it's a bank trust, they don't need to be Mexican citizens because it's a trust, remember? So a trust is only for not only, but it's mainly for foreigners. So they just have to pay the bank trust some amount of money, which is not a lot, like $2,000, $1,000, and let them know that the new owners, due to the fact that they are the beneficiaries, are they. So they change the name on the deed and they put whatever was there, that the first, second, and third beneficiary in this percentage are kid 1, kid 2, and kid 3.
Got it. Okay, so because it's already in a bank trust, they just automatically put themselves as beneficiaries, but now they are the owners of the bank trust.
That's right.
Ceci, thank you very much for all of your expertise, all the questions answered. I'm sure a lot of our clients will appreciate it, as well as the team that we have created here in Los Cabos. So again, thank you so much. If we have any questions, I will make sure to send all of our clients to you.
Thank you very much, Patty. It has been a pleasure, and I'll be here for your closing process. We will be waiting on you, and I'm sure you have a very good listing of properties.
Absolutely. Thank you again.